Hello, everybody, and welcome to WCTV's newest show, The Waynesburg Effect. I'm Ryan Schwertfeger. Joining us here is Mr. Adam Karasik and Ms. Paige Carter. So the way this show works is that each panelist will bring up a current event topic that has an effect on the community, us as college students, or even all of us as Americans. Each panelist will get an opportunity to give their opinion on the issue at hand, and we may even engage in a friendly debate on the topic. Now, while all of us have our own opinions, we also do our best to ensure that what we say is backed up with facts, so that you, the viewer, can not only be more informed, but also capable to form your own opinions on how the topic affects you. This is the Waynesburg Effect. Welcome back to the Waynesburg Effect. Let's start off with Paige Carter.
President Obama's new immigration policy got its first hearings on Capitol Hill this Tuesday, and that gave House Republicans a chance to weigh in on the move they say oversteps the president's powers. CNN's Emily Schmidt has the story.
Tuesday's immigration policy fight on Capitol Hill centered on two C's. Common sense, the Democrat Homeland Security Secretary says.
Given our limited resources, these people are not and have not been for years priorities for removal.
Versus the Constitution, touted by Republicans.
We don't believe that the president has the authority to do what he did.
These were the first congressional hearings on the issue since President Obama outlined his policy by executive order last month. It shifts the focus to undocumented criminals, shielding from deportation as many as 5 million immigrants who could clear criminal and national security background checks.
They're lawfully present in this.
Lawfully? How are they lawfully here when the intention of Congress was very clear? They can be deportable. It doesn't mean they will be deportable, but now you're saying...
The Congress has not given me the resources to deport 11 million people.
Despite two immigration hearings in one day, Republicans say President Obama should have waited until the next Congress, controlled by them, convenes in January.
He was, I think, just trying to score political points here, and it's going to cause much more harm in the long run than good.
The closest thing we have to amnesty in this country is doing nothing, and that's exactly what House Republicans seem to be advocating.
The White House counters that inaction on immigration makes a statement too. In Washington, I'm Emily Schmidt reporting.
Some political observers see the introduction on a GOP bill as the most prudent way to respond to Obama's executive order, which could spare some 5 million undocumented immigrants from deportation, as well as allow them to obtain workers' permits, driver's licenses, and a variety of federal benefits, including Medicare and Social Security. Ryan, we alluded to this last show. We talked about Obama's response to the election results. And he did mention immigration. It's been on the table. This is no surprise. But my question to you is, why do you think this is so important to him to go so far as to have an executive order toward immigration?
Well, I think that's a really good question to ask, especially since he had 2 years with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate to pass something if they wanted to pass something for immigration. So I think now that he's trying to create something of a legacy item in a way, he realizes that most likely the Republicans aren't going to pass something that he likes. He's used the threat several times about, write something. If I like it, you can put it on my desk and I might sign it. So I think this is his way of saying that he doesn't think the Republicans are going to actually do something or prepare something for him that he would like. So he's just going to do it himself, which I think in this case is extremely unconstitutional. So I think, but having this immigration, it's going to play to the base. It's going to play to people, whoever's the candidate's going to run in 2016, sort of like in a way that some Democrats, they thought they were going to be able to use health care in 2012 and then for the midterms, but that didn't quite work out. I think this is going to be an issue that's going to be brought up in 2016. So President Obama figured the best way to address this issue was just do it himself.
Okay. So you're kind of taking the stance he wants to leave some sort of legacy.
I think so. I mean, and we saw this with a few other presidents. I mean, in the past. I mean, I'm not saying President Obama and the Hispanic community, I would say, are fairly close. But I think, we look in the past, a lot of presidents have done things that they might not have particularly liked, but they did because they saw the benefits in the future. Like, for example, Woodrow Wilson, he signed one of the amendments so that women have the right to vote. But from what we can tell, we're not completely sure if he was actually completely in favor of the women's right to vote, but he knew that if they got the women to vote, they would most likely then vote Democratic because it was the Democrats that passed the amendment so that they could vote. I think this is sort of something similar where it kind of keeps the Hispanic community in the Democratic camp. So this is going to be played out, especially once the presidential election comes around in 2 years.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I definitely see where you're coming from. I think you have a lot of truth in that. And Adam, did the GOP surprise you with their reaction? Were you just expecting them to go along with this? Because they did know too, but what do you think of their reaction?
Well, yeah, I don't think it was surprising. When you're dealing with like a situation that you don't agree with, you're obviously not going to be very happy with it, and a lot of people don't agree with this, but then there's a lot of people that might, because when you say it in the way, it's to give people a better life because they're going to the greatest country in the world. Like, oh, well, you agree with that because this is the greatest country in the world, and give them a better life than they have. But yeah, I mean, if you have your stance on something, you're not gonna be happy about it no matter how you word it. So I think it seems like not a lot of people want it because you want Americans to have jobs before people that don't even live here. So it can go both ways. But yeah, I wasn't very surprised.
Okay, and Ryan, you mentioned the election in 2016. What do you think people are going to do? Do you think Republican candidates are going to try to overturn this? They're going to advocate that in their elections as a point of, we're going to try to undo what Obama did? Or do you think they're going to try to come up with some sort of policy that kind of coheres with it or is able to be worked with based on what the president's about to do?
I think we'll find out by the end of next year. I think 2015, because President Obama has now issued the executive order, I think over this next year we're going to see how it's going to play out in the courts. I know it came out, a bunch of states are going to file a lawsuit against the executive action President Obama took. And then also with the new Republican Senate, this is the opportunity if they want to pass something. But I would say that if the Republican Senate and House don't pass anything immigration related by the end of 2015, I think then it's going to be up to whoever the Republican candidate is running for president to be the person who kind of determines, this is what I'm going to run on, this is my policy for immigration.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff up in the air right now. I just personally think that a more just human geography type of stance needs to be taken. Like, what are the ramifications of the environments of cities with all these people being able to get the benefits of taxes and driver's licenses and workers' permits? That's really going to affect the state and local governments. And I just think it's important that we have people and think tanks and even civilians thinking about those things. It's a huge decision on Obama's part, but we'll see how it plays out in the election and in the Senate. Coming up after the break, we will take a look at the continued unrest in Ferguson. Stay tuned.
Over the course of several months, Ferguson, Missouri has become the main focus as part of a continuing national dialogue on racism and policing in America. This latest incident in Ferguson started when Michael Brown, an African-American teenager, was shot and killed by a Caucasian police officer, Darren Wilson, back in August. The story made headlines over the summer, but has made its way back into the press as of late after a grand jury decided that Officer Wilson should not be indicted for what took place that day with Mr. Brown. While information regarding the exact details and accounts of the shooting and apparent altercation itself are still not completely put together in the public square, America has become fixated on the demonstrations seen not just throughout the Ferguson community, but across the nation, with many columnists drawing comparisons to the race riots in the late 1960s. Both peaceful and violent protests have occurred, and civil rights leaders have promised more action is to come to show resentment and disdain regarding the grand jury's decision. However, many Americans, including several political and community leaders, are wondering what, if anything, can be done to ease the tension that exists between the different ethnic and racial communities across America. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen this image, but a powerful picture has been sweeping the internet of an African-American boy hugging a white police officer. And we have a clip of what the police officer had to say.
I'm actually very surprised, but very happy too, in the sense that hopefully it can bring some peace and calm to what's going across our nation right now. And just feeling fortunate, the fact that on the smaller end of things, I was able to help Devontae with facing some of his fears individually. But the situation itself is something that police officers do every day when we go out and we work the streets and we make these citizen contacts. And it just happened to be that this situation that day was highlighted through what I have to say is a spectacular photograph, and I was thoroughly impressed.
And now to get a reaction on the fallout after the grand jury's decision, and also to hear their solutions to some of the problems police departments face with not just African American communities, but minorities in America, we're going to turn to our panelists. So I'm going to start out with Paige. I know over the break we actually had a conversation when the grand jury was just coming out with their decision. But I'm not one of the things that we were discussing is, you know, they made the decision at they made the announcement at night. And then we saw a lot of the violent protests break out, tear gas, people looting stores. I just wanted to ask you, did you think that was going to happen? Were we supposed to see all these violent riots that night?
Well, I mean, it seemed apparent because while they were in the deliberation room, there were thousands, it seemed, of people outside of the courthouses in Ferguson. So I definitely knew that no matter the response of the outcome of the case, that there would be some sort of uproar, either good or bad. So it didn't surprise me, but I really do think that the riots and the continued riots are hurting the actual crime that happened, and even if he was guilty, which it appears as though he was, it's almost disrespectful to forget that fact and just be so emotionalized that you feel the need to express your opinion and disregard what actually happened. So I do think the riots are not getting across the point that they maybe want to be getting across, which is tied strongly to racial innuendos. But I think another thing that really is firing people up was President Obama's response to the case. And he very much shocked me with his conference. They gave the announcement on the news that he was going to be giving a conference, and I kind of played in my mind what I thought he was going to say based on Trayvon Martin, similar situations. But when President Obama got up to speak, he really took me back because it's the most presidential, in my opinion, I had seen him in a while. He was very disinterested, and when I say disinterested, I don't mean uninterested. I mean he was looking at the facts. He was a lawyer, so he does understand the judicial system, and he did not make it about race, which I was very proud of because I've seen him do that in the past. And he said that we need to come to terms with the decision based on the evidence, and I thought that was very brave because his approval percentage has gone down half in the African American community. It was 63%, and now it's staggering 33%. So cheers to him for saying what he needed and not making it about race and not being ethnocentric. Maybe that's because this is his last term and he doesn't need to worry about approval rates anymore. But whatever it is, I was very pleased.
That's a very interesting viewpoint. I too watched the news conference, and I thought I did a fairly decent job, trying to go down the middle and not try and play to one side or the other. Adam, though, I just did want to ask, I just brought up with Paige that, with all the different violent protests, we saw the tear gas, the looting that went on, gunshots in the streets. I just wanted to ask, there's been other cases like this, in America's history, but why do you think this one has really kind of latched on with the American public and we're seeing the kind of outcry and protests that we are?
Well, it seems like this has happened a lot recently, and just the fact that people kind of have this mindset that the police might be having too much power, and it might have also been the fact of where it was, because I have an article here that has an interview with the former mayor of Ferguson, and he even says that obviously segregation's not a thing anymore, but he says there is still like this mental presence there that's like we feel like we need to be separated anyway. Like they don't want to be associated with each other, the two sides of this story. So they have their side and they have theirs. So it might have been like, well, they still like the African Americans there in Ferguson still feel like they're threatened all the time, like they're being picked on or mistreated all the time when because they still feel like they're not accepted by Caucasian people. And so I would have to say it might just be the location. It could be just because people have this mindset that police have too much power and that they're always picking on the African American groups, and so I feel like it's all stereotyping in a sense, but that's basically the problem there.
Well, something that you brought up was the police might have a little too much power, and I actually, almost at the same time that we're hearing all the stuff about Ferguson, I've read this very interesting article about President Obama saying he wants to avoid militarized police culture, which kind of came to the forefront, especially after the Boston bombing a few years ago, with they were going through the streets with tanks and the huge SWAT cars and everything. I know we're back where I'm from in New Jersey. We have there's this program where police departments and sheriff's departments can get old military vehicles. And I know that in the light of all this controversy about that, they're scaling that back and they're not going to accept as many and trying to ask, do these police departments need these types of vehicles? And I think in a way that kind of fits in with this story in terms of the police having too much power. Are they maybe over-responding? Are they not communicating as well? Maybe they're trying to show more force than go on a personal basis and talk one-on-one. So I want to start with Paige. I just wanted to ask, what are your ideas, solutions, etc., in terms of maybe how the police and the government communities can more accurately talk and deal with the minorities and the apparent issues that are going on at these local community levels?
Okay, that's a great question, and there's definitely a lot that can be said about it, but we do have to keep in mind that there are parameters within the policing system that are set up, and it may seem like a violation at times, but it's all there for a reason. For instance, a policeman can act one step above what's happening to him. So in this instance, it was justified that he shot his first name?
Brown.
Michael Brown. Yes, he shot him, and that may seem ridiculous or very extreme, but based on what happened, based on what actually happened, based on what was supposed to happen, that could have been what was able and supposed to happen. So we do need to keep in mind that the policing system is set up to be a system. But beyond that, I do think that there's probably some racial tension, but it's hard not to become ignorant to either side. You can either say, I think everyone's a racist, or you can say racism no longer exists. So it's finding that happy medium in between of setting aside racial profiling and saying, let's look at the facts, let's look at what actually happened, and let's be unbiased. Because I think that if even African Americans would do that and not make these media covered cases get so much coverage, and if you notice, it's always the same type of scenario. So I think maybe just thinking more critically in that way, but also just raising awareness in communities with young teens, getting them on the right track. There's lots of statistics on lowered levels of crimes based on just community.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and we'll have to see what's going to happen in Ferguson and all these other communities across America that are facing these very similar issues. So coming up next after the break, we're going to discuss the Supreme Court's decision to hear a case based on free speech and the internet.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are the #1 killer of children 1 through 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Welcome back to the Waynesburg Effect. The matter of freedom of speech has always been one of the most important amendments in the Bill of Rights, one of the things that makes America the best country on earth. But interpreting what is threatening and what is not has always been a debate and has made its way to the courtroom many times. The internet has become the base of most of these cases in recent years, and now the Supreme Court must decide what limitations should be put in place in regards to what you post next on your timeline. So one of the main cases in this situation is this one with Mr. Elenis and versus the United States. He posted a few song lyrics, and these song lyrics seemed threatening to his wife, saying that he would cut her throat and bleed from little tiny cuts, and also involving FBI officer and the cutting of his throat. So there's a lot of violent tension in these lyrics, of course you can tell, and his wife wasn't very happy about this. So he's been serving time while they've been discussing this case. So Ryan, my question for you is, what do you consider threatening, like a post on the internet? What would you consider a threat, and what do you consider appropriate to put someone in prison on those terms?
That's actually a really difficult question. I mean, and that's why we have the legal system to kind of figure out what is okay and what is not okay. But one of the things that you brought up was that someone else. Sorry about that. That he wrote it and his wife thought that it was a threat. I think, in my personal opinion, if he was posting a song lyric that someone else had written, that still might be a little on the line there, but so it's already been said, he's just repeating it. But the fact that he actually wrote these lyrics himself, most likely based off of personal experience or personal thought, that I think that's undeniable, that there's something that's going on in his mind that he's thinking about. And I know in that same article, it says that he's coming back on it saying that, well, I didn't really mean that. Well, then why did you post it? Why would you say something you didn't mean? But one of the things in regards to free speech is what is okay and what is not okay. And that's a line that's obviously with the internet has been a very tough line to be looking at. I'm always reminded about the phrase that, yes, we do have free speech, but you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, because then you're putting people at risk and their lives in danger if that's not actually true. So I think looking at an angle like that, it's very tough to figure out what is okay and what is not. In this particular instance, I think because he wrote the words himself, he posted it, and regarding, of course, what's been going on behind the scenes with him and his wife, I don't think that is okay, and I do think that is considered a threat. So as far as I'm concerned, I think they made the right decision.
All right, yeah, and it's a touchy subject, like everything in the Constitution. It's not meant to be interpreted one way. It's supposed to be a broad kind of interpretation. But another question, Paige, for you: do you think that Mr. Elenis's post should be considered an actual threat? Like, do you think they're doing they haven't made a decision yet? But have you? Do you think that he should be convicted, or do you think he should be let go because he says, I didn't mean for it to mean anything. It didn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me, and I didn't mean to scare anyone with my lyrics.
I think that this case, it's, as you can tell, what judges are saying, what Supreme Court justices have been saying, it's all been very vague and almost literary, because we don't have a lot of concrete policies about online cyberbullying, that type of thing. It's kind of in the process of being made, more founded. But I do think that he could probably be convicted. It would not surprise me. His lawyers are going to try to they're going to get very creative. They already said that his lyrics were inspired by Eminem, which, then puts Eminem to blame. There's always someone else you can make a scapegoat. But I do think that what he did was threatening, and threats can be considered a point of conviction in cases on any level. So yes, I do think he's going to be convicted. I hope that we learn something from this. The judicial system, oftentimes in a Supreme Court case or cases under the Supreme Court, they'll make, like the lemon test, things in the past, Miranda rights, those all stemmed from just normal cases. So I'm hoping that we are better able to articulate and understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, because the internet is it's out there, and you can argue it's First Amendment, but you can also argue that it's threatening. So we'll see. There's pseudonyms, there's all types of things holding us back in that way.
Yeah, and it seems like it's the major source of mass media right now is obviously the internet's the biggest thing. Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at an odd police chase, and a waiter returns a wallet he found with thousands of dollars in it. You're watching The Waynesburg Effect.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
For our final segment, we want you to take a look at this. A waiter in Glendale, Wisconsin discovers thousands of dollars in a wallet underneath napkins on the table. But what he did next has the restaurant rewarding him. Craig McKee has the story.
Wilbur Palacios preps his tables ready for a new evening rush at Home Restaurant in Bayshore. Last Friday, the unimaginable happened. A wallet with a reported $4,000 in it left by a customer.
So the money was on the table?
Yeah, but it was covered with napkins.
Covered with napkins, the wallet's owner was now gone. Wilbur grabbed the wallet and took chase out into the parking lot.
And then I saw him like all the way over there, so I ran over there. He was getting into his car, and I just waved in and just showed him the wallet.
The man gave Wilbur some money to say thank you, and his boss is too.
We're actually giving him a $250 bonus, and we bought him dinner just about every night since he did it too.
Yeah, I just thought it was the right thing to do. So
the fact that they're going to give you $250, what does that mean to you?
Well, I really appreciate it, so I kind of sent it to my mom.
Send it to your mom. Very nice.
For Christmas.
That's awesome.
She really needed it.
Where is she at?
Mexico.
Mexico. Do you have brothers and sisters there?
I have sisters, and maybe they're gonna have a nice dinner to the restaurant.
Are you sending the other money to your family as well?
Yeah, all together.
Feliz Navidad.
Exactly.
It started out like your average police chase in California, but ended up with a skateboard and a reality star. CNN Jeannie Moose has the story.
It started out as just another Los Angeles police chase, a stolen BMW driving in the wrong lane against traffic, doing 90 miles an hour at one point, weaving and squeezing, and then, boom!
Oh, he just crashed!
But the rear ending wasn't the surprise ending to this story. Lugging a getaway skateboard was. The alleged car thief ran across 3 lanes of traffic, clutching the longboard. And then came the move worthy of a movie, if only it had worked. For 5 seconds, the suspect tried to skateboard away from officers in hot pursuit on foot. Experienced skateboarders we talked to gave the suspect low marks. His technique was described as not very good, the chase hysterical. Back on foot, he ran into trouble when a red pickup tried to block his path. He went around it, and then as police were closing in, the same red pickup cut him off and practically pinned him.
Whoa! Who's that guy?
That is the former star of a now-canceled reality show. There's the truck. Luis Lou Pizarro used to run around dramatizing car repossessions, so it seemed natural to help real cops get their man.
It was just instinct, just to, block the guy off.
33-year-old Jesus Zamora was charged with auto theft. Police recovered the skateboard, presumably for evidence, though an officer did play footsie with it. A skateboard isn't what that guy needed. What that guy needed was this.
He's on a hoverboard!
But if this guy had one of those, don't hover, take cover.
Thank you for joining us on The Waynesburg Effect. We'll see you next time.